chat. And if Ben is not, I believe Riley might be, so they can answer those questions. If you need something and no one is noticing and you need to raise your hand so one of them will pay attention to you, if you can use the raise the hand feature. If you're on your phone, you can raise your hand by doing *9. But again, since you aren't going to be able to chat, that might not be helpful, but at least they can call you from your phone number that should be on there and maybe provide some assistance. All right, so to start us off, Ashley Swafford will be giving an invocation. Ashley.
Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for placing your hand of protection on each of us, allowing us the opportunity to gather this weekend as an organization and as friends. We ask that you watch over those not in attendance. Lord, you know their needs. Please guide the hearts and words of our speakers and leaders as they share information and words of encouragement to help us continue to grow as independent individuals, spreading knowledge and awareness. We ask all this in your name. Amen.
All right, we are going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. I recognize that we do not have a flag. However, we did look it up on the American Legion website and it is still allowable. So just wanted you to know. One of our very first Bell student who has now aged out of the program, and we're very sad about that, McKenna Herod is going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. And I'm going to take the microphone off the stand for you, buddy. Do you want to hold it in this hand so you can put your hand in this hand?
I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, love. McKenna has been with our Bell program since the very beginning, and the very first year, McKenna was our only child. So we love her. She's grown up with us, and we look forward to her being around for many, many, many years to come. All right, so I lost my note cards. I'm gonna tell you all that, see? I told you guys eventually sometime this weekend, I would lose my note cards, which means we are going to do the NFB pledge next. If it's not listed next, my apologies, because I'm going to go find my note cards. So Jacob Hack, who is actually one of our scholarship candidates. He is a returning scholarship candidate. We're very, very excited to have him here at convention. So this summer, he actually, that was your second national convention, Jacob? This summer you went to the speaker thing. Yeah, yeah, I would have done that too. You're right here by me. This summer he went to national and we put him to work. So now he knows how to marshal properly. We probably should have put him to work this morning. But there you go. Jacob, do you have the?
Yep.
Okay, here it's right here.
All right. Hello, okay. I pledge to participate actively in the efforts of the National Federation of the Blind to achieve the equality, opportunity, and security for the blind, to support the policies and programs of the Federation, and to abide by its Constitution. Sorry, that's it.
Jacob, did you just do that from memory? No. I was gonna be like, I didn't see you reading. I was very excited briefly. I can't do it for, I try. I do. I mess it up every time. We very much appreciate it though. Thank you. Oh, I keep forgetting. See this in-person thing. I don't know. All I can do is virtual anymore. Kathy Jackson says we're having a door prize. So we're having a door prize. Yeah. To raise their hand, yeah. Oh. Oh, she's not here. And I don't think she's on Zoom. Hold on. Okay. Wait. Ben and Phil and Riley can tell us if somebody's on Zoom. That's where I'm going with this. I don't know where any of them are. Yeah, she said she would be here later, so I think she's not here. Woo! Hey, Laura, didn't you want to say you never win a door prize? I guess it was national. None of us ever wins. Here. All right. I will say this for future reference, if you're on Zoom, you can raise your hand so they will notice you, but we can see the list. So if we don't see you, we will probably move on. The Zoom people can't hear in the back. Oh, they can't hear who's announcing the door prizes. So we need to make sure that's on the mic. Gotcha. Thank you. This is why we have people like Taryn to tell us these things. Okay. Thank you, T. And now I know what I skipped because Taryn's standing there. See, so sorry. Yeah. So it should have followed the Pledge of Allegiance, but now it's going to follow the NFB pledge, which is great too. The singing of the national anthem by Taryn Seif.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleam, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watch were so gallantly streamed, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the lands of the free and the home of the brave?
Not just because you're my daughter, but that was beautiful. All right, we have a very, very, very special guest with us this morning to give a welcome. Congressman John Yarmouth, who is the congressman of my district, the 3rd district right here in Louisville. And this is his last term in office, and we are going to miss him. I told him this morning, I said, when we found out you were leaving and thinking on Washington seminar, I was like, There goes my Washington seminar safe place. I love going to his office because he always listens. He always has thoughtful things to say. And we're very much going to miss you, sir. So you want to come up and
Excuse me, morning voice. Good morning, everybody. It's great to be here. I appreciate the invitation. And whether you're from here in Louisville or just visiting for this weekend's convention, it's my honor to welcome you to the 3rd Congressional District. It is entirely appropriate that this convention be held in the 3rd Congressional District because we are home to 2 of the iconic organizations that have served this nation's blind population, I guess the world's blind population for so long. The Kentucky School for the Blind, 180 years old this year, amazingly. And then the American Printing House for the Blind as well, which has been in the forefront of both developing and making accessible the latest technologies that assist blind citizens. So thank you for choosing Louisville. To your president, Jane Self, and your past president, Kathy Jackson, thank you and congratulations on organizing this fabulous convention. I want to begin by commending you all for your tireless advocacy on behalf of Kentucky's blind population. For 75 years, the National Federation of the Blind of Kentucky has been on the front lines in the fight for equal access and fairness, whether that's bringing change in your own communities in Frankfurt or across the state. It has been a true privilege for me to work with you over the years. I've been lucky enough to serve the people of Louisville through what is now my 16th year and my final year in office. And it's been the honor of my life, in no small part because of the relationships and friendships I've found along the way. I've gotten to meet people from all walks of life, backgrounds, faiths, and abilities. And every one I've met wants the same thing: a fair shot for them and their families and the opportunity to reach their fullest potential. I can't think of a group of people who better embody that spirit than you. You are working every day to improve lives. And because of that work, education is more accessible, technology is more available, and discrimination against individuals with disabilities is being taken on in every facet of life. That is democracy in action. And that's why I'm proud to have been your ally in Congress and why I'm thrilled to join you here today. Though I am retiring, I assure you I won't be disappearing. And I look forward to crossing paths with you in the months and years to come. I hope you have a safe and successful state convention, and I wish you the very best. Thank you very much.
So we have something you don't know about this yet. We have a couple of things for you. One of which is that one of our resolutions that we were doing this afternoon is for you. And Kathy's gonna read that, but this first I'm gonna give you this. So it is a picture of our Bell children and volunteers, and just thank you for your service.
Oh, that's so nice.
Okay, now we have a resolution. Resolution 2022-02 in recognition of service to the blind of Kentucky. Whereas Congressman John Yarmouth has served the citizens of the U.S. 3rd Congressional District, which encompasses the city of Louisville and other incorporated or surrounding incorporated cities in Kentucky since 2007. And whereas many of his constituents are blind and visually impaired, and whereas the National Federation of the Blind of Kentucky participates actively in the annual Washington seminar sponsored by the National Federation of the Blind, and whereas the purpose of this Washington seminar is to present to the Congress the legislative issues most relevant to the blind in the nation, and whereas Congressman John Yarmouth has always availed himself to the Kentucky delegation, engaging in productive conversations, supporting proposed legislation, and co-sponsoring House bills Now therefore be it resolved by the National Federation of the Blind of Kentucky in convention assembled this 29th day of October 2022 in the city of Louisville, Kentucky, that the National Federation of the Blind of Kentucky recognize Congressman John A. Yarmouth for his 15 years of dedicated service to the National Federation of the Blind of Kentucky so that we, the blind, can live the lives we want. Copy of the resolution
So nice. Thank you
and
very much.
a Louis Braille commemorative coin.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, so
Thank you so much.
thank you so much.
Thank
Let me
you.
introduce you real quickly for our national.
All right. All right, thank you. Okay, so we really appreciate you being here, and we will miss you so much. I'm sure that you'll be happy just to be hanging out and, teaching those kids over at U of L. Are you still doing that? Woohoo! All right. Well, just so you know, I was talking you up over there the other day because I work there too. I was like, yeah, he's coming to our convention. Just thought you should know. All right. Well, thank you to our past president, Kathy Jackson, who did a lot in coordinating not only the congressman coming here today, but our next presenter with a proclamation from the mayor's office.
All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Allie Woosley. I'm the Office for Aging and Disabled Citizens Coordinator with Louisville Metro Government. Mayor Fisher was unable to be here today, but we did set up a nice proclamation in honor of your convention. So my office provides advocacy and leadership to committees and programs in the city of Louisville related to aging and disability services. So if you ever visit the city or you live here and you need to know something about aging and disability resources, call me. I'm happy to connect you and serve the city. So this proclamation says, the city of Louisville honors the National Federation of the Blind of Kentucky as we celebrate its 75th anniversary. As compassionate advocates from across Kentucky gather in Louisville to connect and work to advance the general welfare of blind and sight impaired residents, we join them in pressing for the rights, policies, and funding that can enhance the lives and independence of the people they serve. Our city celebrates the National Federation of the Blind of Kentucky and the advocates who make their work possible, present day and over its 75 amazing years. Thank you. And I have a nice large plaque to give to you all to hang and honor this special day. So thank you all.
Yeah, you're just gonna have to keep reminding me because I didn't remember last year and I'm probably not gonna remember this year. I will repeat it in the microphone though this time. Farmer Brock. Like he said, what did I win? Not woohoo, not yay, what did I win? Oh, well, there you go. A lot. That's what happens when you say, what did I win? You just get a lot of hand sanitizer. You don't get a gift card. Oh, yay, farmer. Would you like to do one more since I'm remiss and I don't remember? Go for it. Maria, you should have been here. Pam, I'm going to introduce you next. Woohoo! Just so you know, that's my father. Yes. He is. Dad, I'd like to introduce you to Karen. She'd like to meet you. Hello. All right. Speaking of introductions, from our national office, we have Pam Allen, who is the first vice president of the National Federation of the Blind. Do you want to come say something? I tried to warn you, but they're all loud out there, you know.
Good morning, everybody. It is so wonderful to be here. Roland and I have really been looking forward to this convention because this is our first in-person back national repping convention too. So it's extra special. So happy to be with all of you today. And I love that your dad just won, Jane, because it just illustrates the fact that the NFB is a family affair. So I know how excited we are all to be here this weekend. To celebrate and to reconnect and to plan for what's next in our work as a Federation family. And so we have had such a wonderful time since we arrived. And I know we have a jam-packed agenda today. And so again, we're just excited to be in Kentucky to celebrate the rich history of this affiliate and all the many ways that the Kentucky affiliate has made the National Federation of the Blind stronger. And we are definitely stronger together. So thank you so much and look forward to a great convention.
All right, thank you very much. In case you didn't know, the theme of our convention is facing your fears. So the next several speakers are gonna talk about situations where they face their fears or how you might have opportunities to volunteer and face your fears with summer camp, etc. So what I want to say also, though, is I know that for a lot of people, being able to sit still in a meeting like this, it is very difficult. I have difficulty with that myself. And the fact that I'm sitting up here, I'm like, oh, I can't stand up and walk around. There is a huge space in the back of the room. If you need to sit on the floor so that your feet are stretched out, like I was doing yesterday at TAD, feel free to sit on the floor. Feel free to walk around, pace around. We will have a fit break later with Miss Mary Herod, but just in case you need to move. There are also snacks in the back. If you're facing the podium right now, they're to your left all the way in the back. Hold on, to turn my body around. Sorry. There's also drink coolers. You should be able to hear them on the little counters over there. There is one way in the back and one in the middle. You should have been given with your registration 2 drink tickets. If you were not, who has the drink tickets so I can send them that way now? Okay, so you can see Ashley Swafford. If you have used your 2 drink tickets and you would like to purchase one, they're $3. We are not making money on this. That is how much the hotel is charging us per drink. So just so you know, you need a ticket. It is an honor system. There is a basket to the right of those coolers. All right. Oh, and the sitting still thing, sorry, I had to go back to that because I forgot. If you need something to fiddle with, fidget with, we have little puzzles and fidgets and things like that. Taryn has a big box back there. She's at the back table if you're facing the podium all the way to the right. So if you have trouble sitting still or you fall in the neurodivergent categories of, ADHD, anything like that, feel free to go back and grab some fidgets. She can give you a handful of little puzzles to play with and things like that. So just wanted to have, pardon? Oh, there's Taryn. Anyway. Ooh, cupcakes. Can the head table get a delivery service? Just want to know. Okay, thanks. All right. Our first speaker today is our very own board member, Sandra Williams. All summer, I think, she kept saying to me, yeah, the book, I'm working on the book. What are you talking about? Finally, one night I was like, you have to sit down and explain the book to me because I don't know what anybody's talking about. She was very mysterious. You know how Sandra does. She knows. So it turns out she was doing this very fabulous thing that not a lot of us knew she was doing, being in a book about people who, though they had disabilities, chose to parent children and, were very successful at doing so. to let the world know that they too deserve to be parents and to have the respect that all parents should have with regards to decision making about their children, et cetera. And so I kind of wheedled her into coming today and telling us all about the book we've all heard about. Thanks, Sandra.
Good morning, everyone. I suppose that it was last year, maybe year and a half ago, somewhere in the middle of COVID, I was working from the living room. And at that time, I had two of my grandchildren in my 24/7 care. That was interesting. 9 months, 3 years old, and working in the living room. Well, I received a call asking me if I would be willing to write a story, a chapter in the book, about how it was I came to decide to become a parent. Not only in my case, a parent, but a single blind adoptive parent. You know, if I'm going to do it, I'm just really going to do it. Now, I do have one chapter in the book. It is chapter 16. And I will tell you a little bit more about how you can get that book. But first of all, I'm going to tell you my story. My story that you will hear today is a little bit different than what you can read in the book. I didn't want to tell the exact same story in the exact same way because the book is an amazing book, a compilation of chapters by about 30 individuals who have varying disabilities, from blindness to quadriplegia to, well, everything is in there. And some of these people, not if, but when you get the book, you probably have heard their names because a lot of them are very strong advocates around the state of Kentucky. So without further ado, I shall tell you my story. This week at our 75th annual National Federation of the Blind of Kentucky convention, our topic is facing our fears. We all in our lives have fears that we have to overcome. Perhaps it's the fear of technology, maybe the fear of exercise, or it could be that really big one, the fear that we're going to lose whatever remaining vision we have. Or if we're sitting in this room and we had vision, it could be the fear of losing vision. What will I do? There's also a fear that a lot of individuals encounter, young people, when they take that leap of faith and accept that lovely diamond, 2 carats or more. And just saying, and they say yes to that special someone. Do we have children? Do we not? What about our vision? Will they see? Will they not see? And how will people see us? You see, I grew up a little bit different in my thinking. When I was little, I thought all mommies read bedtime stories with their fingers. I was certain that all daddies had very big German shepherds that helped them get to work. I just knew that was the way it was. Until one day, when I was probably 4, it was a June day. The sky was a beautiful azure blue. The sun was shining brightly down on the green grass. It was one of those pristine central Illinois days, and I was looking out of the window at some children playing with one of those inflatable beach balls. You know the kind. They're white, blue, green, orange, yellow, and red. I could see the sun reflecting on the wall, and I watched and I wanted to join them. So I, very carefully, snuck out of the house. My mother and my youngest sister at the time were napping. I left. I went to the group of children. I want to play, I said. No, you can't play with us. You're blind. I'm not. Not blind. What's blind? I'm not blind. Yes, you are. Yeah, said a little boy. Still remember that child's name. His name was Dana. He said, you're blind and your daddy's Mr. Blind Man. Mr. Blind Man, what on earth was that? I had no idea. Although I had heard the children say, good morning, Mr. Blind Man, when we walked down the street. I was totally hurt. I ran back into the house. I had to admit that I'd been gone, found my mommy. Mommy, what's blind? Am I blind? Are we blind? And she sat me down on the edge of the bed. She didn't chastise me for leaving the house unattended. And she said that we were blind. You see, both of my parents were totally blind. And she said, we are blind, but it doesn't mean anything except for the fact we don't see like other people see. You see, I wasn't positive of what all that meant because I could see. I saw the blue sky, the green grass, the bouncing ball. I saw my mommy. I saw my orange short set that I was wearing that day. It had green and white stripes. I could see that. So I wasn't sure. And she said, close your eyes. And I did. She asked me what I saw. And I said, nothing. And she said, well, for us, that's our blind, but we do anything we want to do. I was raised with that attitude. You do anything you want to do. And believe me, I might have taken that to a little bit, extreme. Please do not speak with my sister in the back of the room. Won't be necessary, but I probably took a little bit of leeway with that. So we're going to skip ahead a few years. And this was another beautiful afternoon. And my memory is very odd. We were having hot dogs and barbecued potato chips for lunch. And we were just sitting around talking. My mother was a talker. My mom still is a talker. But anyway, we were sitting around talking at lunch. And my mother was asking, who's my middle sister, was still a baby in a high chair. And my mother asked me, do you think one day when you grow up, you want to be a mommy? Oh, yes, I said, I want to be a mommy. I want 2 little boys and 3 girls. That's 5, right? No. Anyway, that is what I said. I wanted to be a mommy, even though I was 5, and that's what I thought about. I played dolls. I played with my sisters, and I was a lot older than my youngest sister. So I had the opportunity, I think we're 12 and a half years different in age. So she grew up not knowing how many mommies she had, but I played with her. I took her places and, did things. So I knew that this mommy thing was something I wanted to do. Fast forward a little bit, by this time I'm 16. Now I was born with a genetic condition. It's called Peters anomaly, and it has several components to it. And one of the components is the glaucoma. Well, when I was 16, I was diagnosed with the glaucoma and my pressure skyrocketed. I had pressures as high as 68. That hurts, just in case you don't know. I was given lots of eye drops and lots of very big, very orange pills. And I took them because my parents said I had to. And the doctor said, if you don't want to be blind, you will take this medication. So I did. They never told me that anything weird would happen if I took the medication. First weird thing happened. I was in a restaurant with my family and I started shaking and I dropped my water all over the restaurant table. And everybody ran to me. Oh, it's because she's blind. No, it's because I'm shaking and I feel very odd. But, I went with it. So I was 16. I went through high school, went through college or part of college, got married extremely young. And the mommy thing came up again. So I endeavored to be a mommy and things didn't happen the way things usually happen. And I endeavored and nothing happened. And at that time, my sight was getting worse. I had a transplant, maybe 2 at that point. And okay, things didn't work well in the marriage, so that stopped. I still wanted to be a mom, went on, so I tried the marriage thing again. Guess what? That didn't work either. But I still went on, still wanted to be a mom. I got set back. Now, I will tell you that at some point I watched a television show, probably with my mom and sisters, and it was a show on our local news station. It was called Wednesday's Child. And I remember the camera lens, the view on the TV showed everything all blurry. And it was playing a lullaby on a music box. And there was a precious little baby in her crib. And it was a plea to adopt this blind baby. And she would make someone a lovely child. She actually did make someone a lovely child. She's a nice young woman, not here this weekend because I hear she's sick. But she was my inspiration for adoption. I thought, well, maybe I can be a mom by adopting. So while I had been married the second time, I went to the state authority where you go and you sit through classes and you learn how to be a mom or a dad or whatever. And you sit there and they give you lots of books and lots of paper and make you play weird games with strangers. Lots of role playing, lots of scenarios given. And I was a little intimidated because when you walk in the room and they pump you up and you're going to get this lovely child, and then they give you a 200-page book and it's got all kinds of pages and workbooks. And the lady, she didn't say too much because my other person saw a little bit better than me, although we were both visually impaired. And I said, oh, we'll manage, we'll be able to do it. And at that time, there wasn't all the technology we have and everything. And even if it was out there, it wasn't for the lay person. I think we had just gotten a computer in, I'm so embarrassed. I think it was 1992. And we did the classes, but by the time I finished the classes, the person was no longer. And I thought, well, I asked the director of the program, I said, when I get it together, would I be able to do this on my own? She said, sure, there's no reason you shouldn't be able to. So I went on, I recouped, I got a different job, put back money, did all the things you do when preparing for a child. You see, I could not have a child in the regular way. You know why? It was the big orange pills. They hurt my insides, and no one told me that that was a possibility. So, I mean, they hurt my insides so badly that I am not allowed to give blood because of the damage the big orange pills did to me. So anytime you get a big orange pill from your doctor, make sure you ask what it might do. I didn't know. So I got over that and went on with it. Now, meanwhile, I'd probably had another 7, 8 eye operations. And that was rather frightening because I was going through this stuff by myself for the most part and taking lots and lots of prednisone. Prednisone makes me, well, like I said, don't talk with my sister after this over. It makes me a little bit out of control. We'll go with out of control. It bothers me. But I took a lot of that, but I still wanted to do this mommy thing. I don't know what it was. I just wanted to provide the opportunity for a little human being to grow. I've always had a fascination with growing things, kittens, puppies, birds with broken wings, flowers, and babies. So I was on the road. So after I got a different job and a different place to live, I called the state of Kentucky back and said, okay, I'm done. I'm ready. I can do this mommy thing now. They said, we have a new class. If you take this class, you will be first in line to adopt a foster child that's placed in your home. Yay, I thought. So I went to the class. It was 2 weeks long. And so I did the class. Now, while I was doing that class, some things happened in my personal life. One of the things happening was, well, 3 things. I got a new job. The lady from the city that left, yeah, that used to be me 22 years ago. So I worked for the city. It wasn't called disability and aging then, but I got a job in the mayor's office. So I was so thrilled about that. But then my grandmother passed away. I was so sad about that. And then another very important lady in my life passed away. Lots of you in this room know her. It was Betty Nicely. She had such an impact on my life. And she was so behind me in wanting to be a mom. So those 3 things happened. And I finally was finished with funerals and everything. And I was sitting in my office, probably thinking about what I should be doing. You know how offices are. When my phone rang and I answered, and it was a woman from the state. And she said, Miss Williams, are you still available to take a child? I said, yes, I'll take one. Well, he's blind. Do you still want him? Yes. And in my head, I'm going, yeah, give the blind woman the blind baby. Okay, I'm good. I'm good. I'm like, yes. When do I get him? How do I get him? And I went on. And I said, yes, 36 hours is fine. Most people have at least 9 months. Even with a preemie, you've got probably 6. I had 36 hours. And the only baby thing I owned was a bassinet. They had told me the baby was 9 months old. And in my thinking, I'd seen babies before. I knew what they were. And I'm thinking, that's a little big for a bassinet. What am I going to do with him? It was a boy. And I thought, what am I going to do with him? So I went home and started making phone calls. And I called a lady that I went to church with, and she fostered more kids in the state of Kentucky than most at this time. She's no longer here, but I said, okay, a baby's coming and I don't have diapers, and 9 months old. Do they eat food? What do they do? Oh, and I was just having, a moment. And she said, okay, let me find someone to watch my children. She was fostering 4 or 5 at that time, and I'll come and get you. And she took me to Kroger. Do you know how much baby stuff you can buy in a Kroger? I had diapers and sippy cups and baby food and banana cereal. And so I felt better, although I'm thinking, where do I put it to sleep? So then I started calling my Federation family, and I rounded up some blankets and a crib and a changing table. And I'm like, okay, that's good. And the day came. It was a Thursday. I was watching all my children. And it went off. Next soap came on, and the doorbell rang. I looked out the window, and there was a white car with a state emblem. A man said to me, are you Miss Williams? Yes, I am, I said. We have your baby. Talk about delivery. I mean, my delivery room was the living room. So he said, let me go get him for you. So he went to the car and brought this little human being, and he placed him in my arms. And I had enough vision at that time. Those little brown eyes looked up at me, and it was love before I had the front door closed. He also gave me a hefty cinch sack with all that child's worldly belongings. And let me tell you, the cinch sack wasn't very full. First thing I did was cry. Next thing I did was try to feed the little human and spill the formula all over him because the bottle wasn't that good and the nipple fell off. And I'm like, oh my goodness, what do I do? And I don't have a baby tub. So that's why there are sinks. And if they're clean, they make wonderful repositories for dirty babies. So that is what I did. Now, the journey with my son, whom later I named Sean Michael, most of you in this room know, you know, it was a different journey because I knew when they put that little human being in my arms, he wasn't like most babies. 9 months olds, they move around a lot. They make lots of really cool noises. They turn over, they crawl, they kick. And he just lay there and looked and said, "Guh." That was his word, "Guh." All he said. "You want a cup?" "Guh." "What do you want?" "Guh." That was it. So I knew something wasn't right. I made lots of phone calls. Now, at this point, my visual impairment, my blindness wasn't getting in the way. You know what was getting in the way? It was attitude. I got a terrible feeling in the pit of my stomach every time I had to take Sean Michael to a new specialist. You know, I had some opportunities at that time, but I always had to consider were there going to be the appropriate services he needed. I had to get him services from our visually impaired preschool. He had play therapy and physical therapy and respiratory therapy and speech therapy. He had therapy. And every last single time one of those providers walked into my home or I walked into my office, it was not "Good morning. How is Mr. Sean today?" It was "Good morning. Oh, you're blind?" "Yes, as a matter of fact, I am, but we're here about the baby." You know, I took my baby to the hospital when he was 13 months. He wasn't mine yet. He was still a foster child. And they tested him and they said, you know, he's got a little water on his brain and he isn't right in this way or that way, you know. And they said, no one will blame you if you will just give him back. They said he will never walk, he will never talk. He will never know you. Let me tell you, he knows me. And when he needs money, who does he call? He knows that number and he knows. But that's what I was told. Every person that came in that house, are you sure? Are you feeding him? How? May we see you feed? How many parents who are not blind or otherwise have a disability have to prove you can feed your baby? Well, I did. So it was rather daunting. There was a bit of a fear factor there because I always thought, what would they think of me? What if Sean Michael had formula on his shirt? I burst so many diaper bag zippers because there was no way I was going to allow that baby to have a speck of any imperfection on him. I carried like 5 outfits with me everywhere I went. Oh, he sneezed, let me change him. Okay, let me tell you, by the time the second one came along, I was down to, if I could stick the outfit in my pocket, I might take it with me. With my daughter, who came along a year and a half after my son, and they were 6 months apart, not related in any way. Just the fact that they were special needs children from the state of Kentucky. Now, my daughter had a whole set of different circumstances. She was a child of trauma, and trauma does hideous things to a young mind. And dealing with the professionals who deal with trauma as a blind woman does hideous things to the blind woman. Those people whom you would imagine should be some of the most compassionate have to be gently led and taught. I would get a physical pain in my stomach when I went to a particular psychiatrist's office, because we had to go through how was the mom and how was my eye, and then were I having more surgery, and wouldn't my surgery cause more trauma? Because by this time I was using a cane. My kids never thought anything about that cane, except when they got angry at each other, it was the weapon of choice. I ended up having to hide my cane on occasion. Otherwise, I might find it out in the backyard or upstairs. I have a cane place, but with kids, you might not have the cane place. So as I meandered through that thing called motherhood, I became a stronger advocate. I became a stronger blind woman. By the time the kids were 15, I suppose, my vision, I was definitely using a cane all of the time. And telling teenagers, mom can't see to do that, or mom, that was scary, because you want to have some sort of, something in your child's thinking of you in your mind. And I was really scared of having that conversation with my kids, that this is something I can't see. I made you a picture, mom, or do this, and me being able to say to them, describe it to me. But we made it through that, and the children were more understanding. They would help me. Okay, so they got in a few fights when friends made fun of their blind mom, and I did have to go to school. Well, they were defending me. That's kind of noble, isn't it? We don't have fighting in the school. Oh, okay. But that's what we went through. The book gave me the opportunity to write some of these down, these thoughts down. It was done in an interview form for me, so it's a little different than it might have been if I had just been freehanding it. But this whole experience has taught me so many things. In so many ways, we are who we choose to be. We are who we allow ourselves to be. We are. We just are. Yes, we might be blind. We might be visually impaired. We might have some other disabilities along with that, but we are. We're amazing. I'm amazing. You're amazing. And no, I don't mean that paternalistic amazing. Oh, you're so amazing. You put your shoe on this morning. No, not that kind. We are amazing because we are free to be inside the people that we are. We are amazing because we have this huge family of people all around this country who are there to guide us, who are there to be that soft landing when we fall, because you know what? Sometimes we're going to fall. How many times in that home mom process did I call a friend? How many times did I call Kathy? How many times did I call Jane or Ashley or Mary? Because we are family. We are awesome. And no matter what it is we choose to become, no matter how big that fear is, and that fear is real, it can't be discounted. Most of you know how I was when I lost most of my vision. All I see are lights, and I used to be able to read a newspaper. I didn't do it well. And you know what? That too was okay. I had my children because I'd done that mom thing. I'd overcome that fear. I had my family, the one that I was born into. And then I had my other family. I had the Federation family. And there was never a time when I didn't have access to resources, training, advocacy, a listening ear. So what I'm here to say to you all today, that no matter how large you think it is, or how small others might want you to think it is, with education, training, support, stick-to-itiveness, determination, motivation, you can overcome anything. You can be anything, and you can live the life you want to live. Thank you.
Kathy Jackson, do you still think you're in charge here? I know, I'm messing with you. This morning, I will say this, she says to me, "Oh, it'll be fine." I'm like, I don't know if I've ever heard you say that. Usually you're like, "Oh no, we have to get on time." So that was me this morning. Kathy told me it would be fine. It really was too. Ooh, Pam Allen, door prize. Well, you did today. What is she winning? NFBK of Kentucky shirt. Woo! I bet that was planned, huh? Oh, congratulations. Sandra is right about the support and being a family, and that being the way that you face your fears. I do not know if he is on the Zoom today, but if you're on there, Danny, you know who you are. And this gentleman called me a few days ago, and oh, sorry, yeah, I heard. Yes, I did. Okay, I will in a second. This gentleman called me the other day and went blind 3 years ago, and for the first time is about to not live with any other family members, but with his 9-year-old child on his own. And he had a lot of fears surrounding this, and I gave him the link to listen today, and I hope that you are listening, and I hope that that helps you. And if you did miss this, we're going to get you the YouTube recording that should be happening. I was just told that the author of the book, in David Mathis, yes, David Mathis, is actually with us today and would like to say a few words.
Mary Jo, hello. Thanks. Sandra asked me to talk about the accessibility formats we have for the book, but just a few more things about the book, if you don't mind. Okay. And Sandra interviewed for the book, and the way we did the interviews, I put the audio through a transcription software. Then I cleaned up the transcription and kind of put it in a narrative format, although I didn't have to do that with Sandra very much. And I should have let her submit the story, because she did a lot better job than on the interview, I thought. Very good. We have 30 stories in the book. I worked for the Center for Accessibility part-time, and we decided to do the book to raise awareness about parenting with disabilities. All disabilities are represented in the book. I'm sure many of you know several of the people in the book besides Sandra. And we had 22 Kentucky families out of the 30 are in the book. We had 2 families from Cincinnati, Ohio, and somebody from Florida who actually worked for me in Kentucky, in New York, New Jersey, Washington State, Arizona, and California. So one of the issues we had, and one of the reasons we went out of state for a couple people is we wanted all disabilities represented. I couldn't find anybody with an intellectual disability or autism who was a parent who was willing to talk about their experiences in Kentucky. So we went out of state for a couple of those folks. And we did, we started off with interviewing, Zoom interviews. That's how Sandra did her story. 18 of the 30 were Zoom interviews, and the parents were allowed to change what the narrative came out from the interview in any way they want. Most parents pretty much left the narrative alone from the interview. One completely rewrote it, but that's okay. We had 10 people submit their own stories, and I worked with a couple of those folks to change their stories. Do any of y'all know Jerry Gordon Brown? She's in the book, and this is during COVID. That's one of the reasons we did Zoom interviews. This is during COVID, mostly when we put the book together. And Jerry, but I did go to Jerry's house and had coffee with her, and she was going on about being a class ahead of Muhammad Ali at Central High School. And she marched with Martin Luther King in 1964. And her mother lived at Waverly Hills in the 40s for 3 years. None of that has to do with her parenting, but I thought it was a really great story. So we added all that stuff in there. It's interesting about Jerry's story. She was born in, I forget the name of the town in Tennessee, but it's the birthplace of the Ku Klux Klan. And Jerry's African-American. But her parents were both, her father and her grandfather were both prosperous farmers, so she didn't have any trouble in Pulaski, Tennessee. They moved up to Louisville. I'm telling you her whole story, but it's okay. They moved up to Louisville, and her mother could get treated at Waverly Hills. And her daughter, she moved, Jerry moved to Ohio for a while, came back, and her daughter was going to school in Louisville. And on the way to school one morning, this is during the busing crisis. Some of us in the room are old enough to remember that in Jefferson County. And her daughter said to her on the way to school one morning that she was scared of the KKK. And I thought that was ironic that she didn't have any trouble in the birthplace of the Ku Klux Klan and moved to Louisville and actually felt threatened at one point. So there's 30 stories. We've sold or given away about 750 copies so far. So as far as the book is available here in town at Carmichael's, it's also available on Amazon. Amazon has a Kindle version. The book is available through Bookshare, which provides accessible formats, but I'm not sure how that works, to be honest. I think you have to be in school. And 2 weeks ago, we were up in Frankfurt at the Frankfurt Library. There were 3 parents from the book, including a niece of one of the people here today. And a very good session at the library in Frankfurt. But I met 2 people who are actually recording the book right now for the Kentucky Talking Books. We submitted it at the time of publishing, which was back in July of 2021, but they were so backlogged from the COVID because they couldn't record during COVID that they're finally getting around to recording the book now. So that's basically the accessible formats that are available at this time. Second enough, Sandra, you want me to add anything? Okay. Anybody have any questions? Okay, thank you. Thanks very much. One more, I'm sorry. I'm on my way to the Kentucky International Convention Center because the book is at the Louisville Book Festival this weekend. So.
I was gonna say at this time, I did remember, but go for it. Sorry, I was cleaning the microphone. Mary Harrod got that door prize. Woohoo! Well, you're gonna see Mary in a little bit here. All right, so how many of y'all went to summer camp? Me, woo! So a couple of years ago, we were all sitting around reminiscing about the good old days, especially Lonnie Swafford and myself, talking about when we were younger and we went to Trooper Island with the Lions youth camp. And how sad we were that no longer existed. And I keep trying to tell people it does still exist. It's just in a different place. So instead of my continually telling people how they can still volunteer and still have an impact on blind youth, I was like, let's just bring Mark here and Jen, and they can tell everybody about what is available. I will tell you, I know Riley Seif has volunteered the last couple of years. And I know that even if you can't come for summer camp, you guys have other volunteer opportunities as well. So here you go, Mark.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered today to join these two in holy matrimony. Oh, wrong speech. All right. Unfortunately, you guys set me up for failure by allowing me to follow up behind Miss Williams here. I don't know how I'm going to follow behind that. That was quite a inspiring session. So how many of you were involved in Trooper Island? Show of hands. All right. The Trooper Island actually set the foundation for what I am involved in now, which is Camp Crescendo. It is located in Lebanon Junction. That is the new youth camp for the visually impaired children. And we have that in conjunction with the hearing impaired camp and a foster children camp. I get to take the mask off up here, don't you? All right. So hopefully you can hear me better now. All right. The Lions Club purchased Camp Crescendo, which is a band camp, in '96. It is a 186-acre property. It has a 5-acre lake, which we use for fishing and boating. I've been fortunate enough, I think we're on year 4 out there now, 5. My wife's corrected me. She's telling me 6. I can't count. We've been out there for 6 years now working with the visually impaired youth, and it has been an honor. And it's funny, I did not know prior to coming in here what the theme of this event was. Facing fears. And it's funny because me not being visually impaired, I have the fear of messing up every time I get out there with these kids. I'm always afraid that I'm going to say the wrong thing or do something wrong and offend one of them. And the funny thing is, these kids, they don't miss a beat. One of my campers, Gabe, has albinism. I think it's that right. I did not know of SPF 100 until I started this camp. That stuff's hard to find. But yeah, you have to apply that like every 15 minutes on this boy. But if he misses it, he points out very quickly that he turns into a strawberry. But the opportunities that I've had, and you think that you're helping these children, but in fact, they've helped me over the years. I've been able to take 13 years of my scouting career and hand it back to these kids and give them the opportunity to have a camp experience like I've given scouts over the years. We do BBs, we do archery, we do absolutely everything that any other camp experience would have. It is my job as a camp director to figure out how to do it, because nothing's impossible. It's just how do we make it possible? Camp Crescendo is always in need of help. We're in need year-round of help. There's two paid people out there. One is administrative staff and one's maintenance. 186-acre property that is an aging facility has a lot of maintenance. So if anybody's ever interested, you're welcome to come out. We're always interested in having staff help. We need staff to help with the camps. I had a list of things worth talking about, but everything changed once I heard the presentation earlier.
Your volunteer opportunities are on your list.
We do have some volunteer opportunities. lionscampcrescendo.org. There's also some pamphlets available at the front table when you checked in. You can also contact me. My phone number is on the business, on the orange pamphlet that's located out front with our camp information. And we have projects all the time. Riley can vouch for that. She was out there with us scraping paint off doors. But those of you, and I think it was really pointed out really well with the presentation just a minute ago. I know as a parent, we shelter our children. We don't want our children to fail, and we don't want them to get injured. We always think of what we did as a child and how we got skint knees and bumped ourselves, and how that one ramp that we jumped on our bicycle was too high and what happened. And when we see them do that same thing and prepare for that jump, and we're like, oh, no, don't do that, because I know what happens next. But those are learning experiences. Those bumps, those bruises, those scrapes are learning experiences. And sometimes as parents, we don't allow those learning experiences to happen. At camp, we allow those learning experiences. We do it as safely as possible, but we challenge these kids. I take kids through trails in the woods. I allow them to actually hike. It's a small trail, but they don't do this. They don't get challenged. I make them think outside the box. I give them the opportunity. When I have a camper that I sit down with and ask them if they're looking forward to shooting the BB guns the next day, and they ask me if I'm crazy because they're blind, they can't shoot a BB gun. And I'm like, why does that stop you? You have to figure out how to make it work. And we can do it safely. So if I challenge them there and they do one thing that they think that they couldn't do there, and then later on in life, they're challenged with something else, they can maybe think back and say, you know what? That crazy guy at camp that said, we're going to shoot BB guns even though that I'm blind. We're going to shoot archery even though I can't see that target. And then I'm going to end up hitting the target with archery. Maybe those challenges in the future won't seem as dramatic and won't seem as challenging. Like I said, the camp, I volunteer several hours a week out there, it seems like. There's always volunteer opportunities. It has given me more than I think it's probably given some of the kids. If any of you guys are interested, feel free to talk to me during break. You do have my phone number?
pass it along when, if you guys get in touch with me, if you have my phone number.
But this, the camp still is a free camp. Our numbers are going up. And we're doing a lot more promoting. Since we have taken over, me and my wife has taken over as directors. We now have a program that is directly designed for children with visual impairments. When before it was not designed that way in the past, prior to us taking over, it was not directly designed for these children. So now it is actually being designed, taking in consideration the needs. Any questions? Thank you. Door prize.
Yes, ma'am. Oh. Stephanie Davis winning a goodie bag. I don't know what that means or what it might be. All right. I was just told by Ashley in the front of the room that Mark actually volunteers with the Scouts at KSB. And I vaguely now remember this, that now that he reminded me that that's where him and Riley met, was scouting at KSB. So like the Derby cars, the Pinewood Derby. Oh, apparently he did the Pinewood Derby with them. That's so old school. I love it. Oh, that's awesome. That's really cool to know. Awesome. That's great. I love it. Well, definitely, if you are interested in volunteering, take some information from out on the table or find Mark somewhere in this room. And if it is after today, get in contact with me and I will definitely get you in contact with them. I think it's just such a really cool opportunity and a lot of us have missed that. Mary Harrod is standing up front, which reminds me that it's time for a fit break. Woohoo! What are we gonna do, Mary? Sandra groaned at you. You can take it off the stand.
Okay. That's right. Thank you, Kathy, for the reminder. No, it's okay. All right, we are going to stand up. We are going to reach to the sky to get a good stretch. Go on ahead and stretch up. For those that can, stretch on your tippy toes up to the ceiling. Awesome. All right, we are going to walk in place for 20 seconds. So let's walk in place. Trying to find something to think about doing at a table is kind of hard. So we're going to walk in place. Let's keep walking. I am not going to sing for you as the music while we walk, but if anybody else wants to, that's fine. All right, now we are going to what we're going to do is from our waist, we're going to twist at our waist and kind of go side to side, kind of get our hips moving, our sides moving. All right, that's everything I had planned. Give it back. There you go. Thank you all.
Hey, I'll let y'all do another door prize so that you don't yell door prize at me. Just saying. Plus, I'm gonna clean all this stuff real quick. Oh, Steven, you're not here to win your gloves. He'll be so disappointed. I would like to point out that Stephen is 13, so. Oh, Mary Jo, she's taking your prize. All right, Mary Jo Hackworth wins the of gloves. I think she actually will know how to use them. All right, I cannot say enough about this next speaker. And for the last several years, APH has shown a tremendous amount of love for this organization and a tremendous amount of support for this organization. They have very, very generously donated space for our Bell program every year since the beginning. They have very, very generously donated time of their staff while our Bell kids are there to teach them things, to allow them in the recording studio, to allow them to have hands-on at the museum. We've taken them to Lynn's and Lynn has taught them how to use the POS system audibly and things like that. So I cannot say enough about APH and the support they provided for our Bell program. And one of our favorite parts of Bell always is Mr. Mike Hudson from the museum. I remember one of the very first years, I don't think it was the very first year, he took them in the office at the museum and let them hands-on touch all kinds of really old printing equipment for Braille. And I can still look back at those pictures. Those kids were so fascinated. And it was a really, really cool experience. And I know that this year they have opened their Helen Keller exhibit, and Mike is sending out lots of really cool information and emails about that. And we wanted him to come speak to you all today about some of the new things that they have going on. That's your cue. I was looking for you. I was like, where is he? I was like, oh, well, you know, just come and interrupt me. It's all good.
Thank you. Wow. Thank you for inviting me to talk to the 2022 convention of NFB Kentucky. I brought with me today our senior grant writer, Marissa Slaughter, who's going to make sure that everything I say is strictly accurate and is going to report the same back to our company. No, actually, our development department is working very hard to support all of our efforts, and I really appreciate Marissa being here with me today. Just by way of introduction, I'm wearing a black suit. My hair is gray. I have my favorite tie on. That is a checked pink, blue, and red tie that my sister gave me for my birthday that makes me feel very good when I wear it. And I have a big button on here that says in print and Braille, "Welcome everyone," which is our slogan at APH. Now I have titled this speech, how much time do I have? 45 minutes, awesome. So I have titled this speech, I hate people that go long in their speeches, don't you? I have titled this speech, Thoughts Around the Water Pump, because our efforts in the museum at the American Printing House for the Blind over the last 15 years have borne such incredible fruit that is never a bad idea to take a deep breath and think about where you are. Now, I've been giving a version of this speech over Zoom and Skype and the telephone to groups across the USA during the COVID epidemic. But let me tell you how gratifying it is to be in the room with you today, live and in person, and to look out into the audience and see the faces of all the many friends that I have made over the last 17 years at APH. But if you have been on one of those Zoom calls and anything I say starts to sound familiar, I think we still have some coffee out in the lobby, and I'll be done here in a few minutes. So the water pump is an obvious reference to that incredible moment in the life of author and activist Helen Keller at the age of 7, when her teacher, Anne Sullivan, herself only aged 20. Is anybody in the room 20 or younger? Anybody? There might be. So how do you prepare yourself for a moment in your life when at the age of 20, and after basically 20 years of being desperately poor and disabled and anonymous yourself. That moment over the brief summer with an incredible child that you become momentarily the most famous teacher in the world. Anyhow, I digress. That incredible moment in the life of author and activist Helen Keller at the age of 7, when her teacher, Ann Sullivan, herself aged 20, broke through the physical isolation of Helen's deafness and blindness to teach her the concept of language. And on a smaller scale, and without the fanfare and the press coverage and the major Broadway plays, each of us has our own water pump moment when a teacher helps us to understand, to know, to grow. Now, as you might know, 3 years ago, the American Foundation for the Blind, where Helen and Annie both worked from 1924 until their deaths, transferred their Helen Keller archive and the general American Foundation for the Blind archive to our museum. AFB, after close to 100 years in New York, moved their physical headquarters to Virginia and was looking for a landing spot for their collection, which had been in cold storage for years. January 28th, 2020, when the collection arrived on our loading dock on 23 pallets, myself and Justin Gardner and Mary Beth Williams at APH have been spending most of our time inventorying, counting, and shelving the most wonderful intellectual detritus of the lives of two of the most interesting women of the 20th century. Helen and Annie traveled all over the world in their mission to educate and advocate about and for people who are blind or low vision. And wherever they went, they were celebrated and honored and given gifts of the most amazing variety. And when not on the road, the pair lived interesting lives, entertaining and being entertained by wealthy benefactors, inventors and celebrities, writers and poets, actors and actresses, politicians, kings and princes and princesses. And in her spare time, Helen wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote at least 11 books and countless magazine articles, speeches, and letters. And people wrote her. Oh, yes, they did. And my favorite letters are not the funny jabs from Mark Twain or the earnest notes from Alexander Graham Bell and Darling, all the finest people of the East Coast liberal establishment, but the countless letters from the little people, asking Miss Helen for just a little piece of her for themselves. A little boy in Colorado writing a book report, asking her to send him an original poem in Braille. Or a theater operator in Connecticut asking for her signature on a theater program to present to the play's director. And oh, so many others that harried staff at AFB had to respond to because, you know, Miss Helen is in her 80s and cannot answer every letter individually. And no, she cannot send you a lock of her hair. But this is not the only major collection we've added at APH in the last few years. In 2019, I traveled up to the AER headquarters in Northern Virginia and picked up the archives of the AER too. Now, while not as large as the AFB collection, it's no less important. In fact, AFB was created by the AER. And in a conference room in a nice anonymous office park in Alexandria, Virginia, their then executive director ushered me into where staff had gathered box after box of materials dating back to 1915. AER, like AFB, was changing from a physical office model to a modern cloud-based work from home model. And their board minutes, their correspondence, publications, division newsletters, and photographs that once decorated their walls needed a new home. It took me a couple of days, but in the museum, we've developed a lot of experience going through those kinds of collections. Now, our museum opened in 1994, and we have gradually built a reputation as the safety deposit box for the entire field of blindness. In 2006, I met an O&M and dog guide guy from California named Mike Metier. And we leaned over a case that we had filled with, I think, the 4 O&M objects we had in the entire collection and mused about where Buddy's harness was. Now, if you don't get the harness, if the reference, Buddy was Morris Frank's first dog guide. Although really, he was a she. whose real name was Kiss. And if you don't know who Morris was, Morris Frank helped found the Seeing Eye with Kiss's breeder and trainer, Dorothy Eustace, thus creating the field of orientation and mobility in the United States. Anyhow, I think we both decided that the harness must be in the Smithsonian or something like that, along with Judy Garland's ruby slippers and Fonzie's jacket. Now, you all do know who the Fonz is, right? But the next day, Mike was at a conference with Rick Welsh, who had just then retired from Pittsburgh Vision Services. And I hadn't met Rick yet, but the next week I got a phone call. Rick was on the archives committee for AER's Division 9, their O&M division. And the O&M division was looking for a new home for its Warren Bledsoe O&M archives, then housed at the Maryland School for the Blind. And would I be interested in talking? I was. I received a bit of fame or notoriety back at APH for flying up to Maryland and helping load a truck with just the most amazing collection of electronic travel aids and long canes and photographs and letters and notes on the backs of napkins and publications documenting the birth and development of O&M, and then driving the truck back to Louisville myself and unloading it myself on a Saturday. And that contact led me to Lucas Frank and Jim Kutch at the Seeing Eye in Morristown, New Jersey, where I learned that not one, but two of Buddy's harnesses were still held in their archives. And yes, they would be willing to loan one to us if we would pay to have them conserved by a leather conservator. And you can come see that unique piece of history in our O&M exhibit in the museum today. It was the subject of a Mysteries in the Museum episode on Discovery Channel or Travel Channel, I think, a few years ago. Did anybody see that? It's really awesome. And there have been other successes as well. We partnered with the Carroll Center for the Blind to preserve the papers of Father Thomas Carroll. Now, in addition to being the spiritual force behind O&M developments in the U.S. Armed Forces during and after World War II, Thomas Carroll founded the St. Paul's Rehabilitation Center for the Blind in 1954 in Boston, the first civilian facility offering comprehensive rehabilitation for the newly blinded. And in 1965, he helped found the first geriatric rehabilitation center for blind people in the country. In short, if it had the word blind in it between 1941 and his death in 1971, Father Carroll had his finger in it. And all of his papers were in danger of molding away after a flood in the Carroll Center basement. Our collections manager at the time, Ann Rich, and I spent months removing rusted staples and vacuuming active mold and mildew. But today, that collection is one of the most important in our hands. And we hold the archives for the Braille Authority of North America. And last year, we added the collection of the Kentucky School for the Blind Alumni Association. And all of those papers are gathered together in one national archives, centrally located here in Louisville, Kentucky. And we're proud and pleased to be able to make them accessible for researchers and scholars and school kids writing those book reports. And at our first Helen Keller Symposium, held this last September, Dr. Mara Mills, who is co-founder of the Center for Disability History at NYU, proclaimed after a tour of our storage facility that she believed we had the largest collection of disability history materials in the world. Not the largest collection of blindness materials, the largest collection of disability history materials in the world. Now, I think that the underlying reason that APH created its museum, and later the reason that folks collaborated with us to create the Hall of Fame for Leaders and Legends of the Blindness field, which is also headquartered at APH, was this vague feeling that our history is being lost, that things are being thrown away that ought not to be thrown away, that young teachers and young specialists are growing up, and young members of the National Federation of the Blind, I might add, that these people are growing up not knowing the roots of the profession, that they're forgetting the struggles that the pioneers went through to get the field organized, to create standards, to create training curriculum, to earn government support, to earn human rights, basic human rights. Maybe we all have that vague feeling sometimes about the younger generations. Now, imagine I have a cigarette dangling from my mouth. They didn't have it as hard as I had, honey. Let me tell you. But I also think that history can be inspiring and informational in our everyday lives. Now, of course, I think that, right? It's my job. But think about your own first days, your first day at school, your first day on the job, your first day in a new town, your first day in your apartment or house, your first day holding your first child, maybe your first day of retirement, or maybe your first meeting of NFB Kentucky. Can you tell me that having a superhero model like Anne Sullivan, knowing that she persevered through the challenges and succeeded beyond her wildest imaginings, can you tell me that that does not give you some confidence? Can you imagine how she felt stepping off that train in the wilds of Alabama, armed only with a high school education, so far away from everything she ever knew, her poor eyes aching, only weeks removed from her most recent eye surgery, straining to understand the accents and make herself and her Boston Irish understood, and to hide the fact from these ex-Confederate gentry that her immigrant father was so destitute that he left her and her brother at the almshouse. And when she arrived at the Perkins School, her dress, her hose, her shoes had been provided to her by the fallen women from Tewksbury and were the only things she owned in the entire world. And if she failed to work this miracle, she was going to lose her position and end up where? And we sit here with our diplomas and our air conditioning and our unemployment insurance and our Social Security and our city buses and our textbooks in Braille and large print supplied at government expense. We have all that. And the story of Anne Sullivan doesn't give us confidence that we can make it too. And how fragile individual memory is, right? I'm 58. I find that I remember less and less, and there just isn't any room left up there in the end. So if somebody doesn't tuck it in a file and label it and make sure that it doesn't go out on the porch for the trash man when Aunt Viv passes, well, maybe nobody is left to remember it and write it down. And then Aunt Viv is just gone. So what are we going to do with all this magnificent stuff? Well, kids, we're going to put on a show. You may have heard some of what is going on over at APH, but I'm here this morning to give you the real skinny, okay? First, you have to understand that this project doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's part of a much larger renovation project that is going to propel APH into the 21st century. Our first building, where the museum is located on the second floor, was built in 1883. And there are 13 other structures stuck onto that original building in one way or another, built in 1927, 1935, 1947, 1953, 1955, 1958, 1963, 1965, 1970, 73, and 80. And although we have updated the wiring and the plumbing and the HVACs over time in a piecemeal fashion, what we are really operating with at APH is a mishmash of really old and really outdated infrastructure. Our meeting rooms are undersized and feature deluxe 1970s era wood grain and beige linoleum tile. Our Wi-Fi and AV connections for HDMI have been jacklegged in wherever possible. There are wires running across the floors. Our windows leak, our roof leaks. On a bad day this summer, a section of brick wall back in production bulged for a while and then fell into the parking lot. Our building is tired. Now, everything is well maintained. It's clean. Typical visitors on the factory floor have described our floors as clean enough to eat off of. And it's obvious that our staff takes great pride in our service to the nation. But it's just time to update our facilities to meet the needs of a modern research and manufacturing facility. Our museum opened in 1994. It explored the first books and the birth of Braille, the history of talking books and large print and educational aids. In 1994, most of our Braille was being embossed on the old clamshell presses using hinged zinc plates prepared on a plate embossing device. Today, most of our Braille is embossed on digital presses like the Braille 0650. We only use the plates for special jobs. In 1994, we were still experimenting with photocopiers in large print. Our large print books then were being printed on offset printing presses. Today, it's all done on 2 oversized cannons. In 1994, all of our talking books were on audio cassettes, and the recordings were still made on audio tape. Today, our recording is all digital, and the finished product is sent to the National Library Service digitally. It has no physical form at all. And if you open our catalog today, sure, you'll still find a few products left that we made in 1994, most of them in early childhood, but most and many of them have been redesigned or simply discontinued in favor of newer and better ideas. In short, there have been so many advances, so many additions that our museum exhibits are outdated, and our collections have increased in size at least 500%. We just don't have the space to tell all the stories in our collection. So let me tell you a little bit about the new museum. First, we are committed to creating the most accessible museum possible. Everything, and I mean everything, must be accessible. In addition to our museum designers, Solid Light, which is a local Louisville firm, we have an accessibility consultant, PAC, that is working with Solid Light to brainstorm every element and ask, does this work for everybody? And folks, this isn't easy. If it was easy, all of you would be able to tell me a great story about a museum you went to last year, but you can't, can you? By and large, museums fall into the no fun zone for my blind friends and colleagues. And we want to change that. We want you to be able to find it. We want you to be able to touch it. We want you to be able to read about it. We want you to be able to learn more about it. We want you to experience it and to walk out of the museum excited about what you saw. And we want you to be so excited that you tell your friends about it, and we want you to want to come back. And we want other museums to learn from us and change the way they are doing things. And if you hate history and you're not interested in old stuff at all, and you don't care a hill of beans about how today is different from yesterday, and that's okay, by the way, at least we want you to acknowledge, gosh darn it, they gave it their best shot. Second, that was a long first, wasn't it? Second, we are reinventing ourselves. When I started at APH in 2005, the museum was named the Marie and Eugene Callahan Museum of the American Printing House for the Blind. That's quite a mouthful. The Callahan Museum had been renamed for a generous donor whose background and interests had nothing to do with blindness. And so under my leadership, we quickly reverted back to just Museum of the American Printing House for the Blind. But the new museum is going to have a new name. And I am proud to announce today that it is going to be, well, I don't know yet. Because our team is still focus grouping and test marketing some ideas. But the ideas that I've heard are very exciting, and I can't wait to be at a moment where I can share that, and I think it will be soon. I do know a lot more about the physical facility. Now, we're only at the 60% level of design completion, so everything is still fluid and grainy. So some of the things I'm going to describe may not actually appear in the final construction drawings. First, we're building a new 4-story structure on the front facing Frankfurt Avenue. The main entrance will be at the parking lot level, and the parking lot between APH and KSB is going to be expanded. We will be widening the entrance to the parking lot and making it easy for buses to park near the entrance. The new building lobby will be located on the ground floor of that building, and we're working very hard to create a space that will be welcoming, that will be easy to navigate, one where the bathrooms make sense, right? How about that? It would be, wouldn't it? We're gonna have an expanded gift shop, a flexible and expanded classroom space, lots of seating for tour groups and visitors, and a reception desk that will welcome you and orient you to the accessibility features of the museum. The upper floors of that building will feature the museum, meeting spaces, eating areas, and a rooftop garden. It turns out you can't build a building in the 21st century without having a rooftop garden. A rooftop garden that gives a grand view of the river in downtown Louisville and should be a great place to enjoy the Clifton neighborhood or get married, right? That'll only be $2,500, please. This new building is going to be integrated architecturally into the 1955 and 1970 buildings that form our current front facade through some radical surgery. Sometime next summer, we're going to move out of those front buildings, and they're going to be reduced to their basically just concrete floors and structural beams. And when we put it all back together, the old buildings will share a brick, stone, glass, and metal skin with the newer structure and radically transform the way the building looks from Frankfurt Avenue. Leading out of the lobby and into the museum on the second floor will be a wide staircase and a new, praise the Lord, large group-sized elevator. Yes. If you've ever been to APH, you know that our elevator is quite small. As you emerge from the elevator or stairs, you're going to find yourself in a central space we call the hub. From the hub, you can find your way into any of the 3 major exhibits in the museum, or you can follow a sequential route to your right. Yes, museum research tells us that people naturally want to go that way. I'm sorry, all of you left-handers. In the hub is a large curved wall that features the main AV presentation, whose preliminary title is Welcome Everyone. Here, the visitor will meet a diverse group of people who are blind or low vision, who will welcome the visitor into their lives or into an exploration of their lives. Here we establish a tone for the whole museum that this is a safe place to explore the humanity we share, despite our physical differences, and begin to encourage visitors to explore how our cast of characters engages with a largely inaccessible world. Passing through Welcome Everyone, we enter section 1, currently titled Blindness and the Human Experience. Our main goal here is to demystify blindness by featuring real people and their stories. First, we'll explore what blindness is. What do we mean by that word? And how different people with different visual abilities experience the world. Stories will explore home life, family, school life, work activities, and reveal how navigating these life activities is often just as mundane and unremarkable as they are for everyone. Next, we'll dive a little deeper into orientation mobility, from guide dogs to long canes to textured side cuts and chirping traffic signals. We'll explore how people who are blind get around. And finally, in this section, we'll meet a cast of 8 to 10 people who will share the accommodations they use to do what they do. And our goal here is to share stories from across the blindness community. They should exemplify perspectives from the extraordinary to the everyday. So if we have a superstar, like, I don't know, mountain climber Eric Weinmeier, right? Then we should also need a young mother, or maybe somebody who's been underemployed or unemployed for most of their life. But we're interested there in the tools and adapted materials that they use to live their life, to cook, to work, to do their thing. Now we walk into the section on Helen Keller, and this will have 4 major sections. There will be a timeline element that will share a lot of the stuff in the collection and tell the basic story. There will be a section with the working title Unlikely Radical that will explore her activism and advocacy and introduce some modern day activists who are working on modern issues facing the blindness field. I mean, does everybody know that Helen Keller helped found the American Civil Liberties Union? That Helen Keller was one of the founding members of the NAACP? That Helen Keller walked picket lines and was an advocate for labor rights? that she was one of the more prominent early suffragists. I mean, Helen was poking around on all of the social justice issues. And so she's a great character to explore the issues that are going on today. There's going to be a section on her world travel that will explore her identity as an ambassador and a fundraiser. And we're going to recreate her office from her home in Arkan Ridge, where visitors are going to be able to step into a moment in Keller's life. And referencing back some of those characters that we met in the first section, they're going to see the accommodations that Helen used to use in her own work life. And the final section has the working title, APH and Innovation. Here we're introduced to the first tactile books and the story of Louis Braille and other innovators who unlocked the printed word for blind readers. We look at the history of early schools. We look at the history of educational aids. We look at the history of refreshable Braille and the impact of the cell phone. We look at the history of tactile production at APH and the history of talking books. We explore product development from concept to prototype to finished product. We look at the history of large print and magnification. We look at what's next, what challenges we still face, what innovations are on the horizon. And we encourage visitors to ask themselves what they can do to create a more accessible world. Annie Sullivan arrived at Tuscumbia, Alabama on March 3rd, 1887. That was 135 years ago. She sent her first report back to her mentor, Michael Anagnos, at the Perkins School on March 6th. She ended it, quote, "Please do not show this letter to anyone. If you want to, you can read it to my friends," unquote. 2 weeks later, 2 weeks, her letter begins, quote, "My heart is singing for joy this morning. A miracle has happened. The light of understanding has shone upon my little pupil's mind, and behold, all things have changed," unquote. Have you had one of those moments? I hope dearly that you have. Anne Sullivan reported her successes to Dr. Anagnos. Michael Anagnos reported her work to the American Association of Instructors of the Blind. And through the work of organizations like the AAIB and the National Federation of the Blind, we report, we grow, we learn, we commiserate, we laugh and cry, we legislate, we set and enforce standards, we gather statistics, we advocate, we do it together. And in so doing, we improve outcomes and we change lives. We change people's lives, we change our lives, and we change the future. APH, through its libraries and museum, is proud to be helping to preserve these stories. I think it's important. I hope you think it's important. And I can't wait for opening day. Thank you. Okay. So I'm informed we do have a few minutes left. So if anybody has any questions about anything, I'll be glad to answer them. Okay, crickets. I love it. Interestingly enough, Marissa and I are also heading over to the book fair. We have APH has a booth over there, and we're going to be talking to kids who come through about the origins of Braille over there. So anyways, thank you all very much.
Oh, that's in case you go to visit your sister at convention. Crystal Brock with her blood pressure monitor door prize. You can do one more door prize if you want. I'm going to set up for the next speaker. So radio silence briefly. All right, so we had to do some moving around here. So our next presentation is going to be a panel. For those of you that were here on one of our chapter, I'm going to say this wrong. Oh, thank you. All chapters meeting. I was like, chapter state. Well, I don't know. We've renamed ourselves a few times. So if you were at the all chapters meeting where we had that really kind of frank discussion that started out with the reading of Beyond the Funny Tree that was written by our own Denise, we kind of got into this whole discussion about the difficulties of being a blind person belonging to this organization, especially in a position of leadership and going through vision loss and, you know, sometimes not really being all that happy about it, and being able to actually express that. Karen, can you make your way here too? So we have Lonnie Swafford, who is the president of the Greater Louisville chapter and also a TAD board member and a Kentucky board member. And we have Angela Henderson, who has been heading up our at-large group and is also a Kentucky affiliate board member. Oh, I'm sorry, and a TAD board member. I knew I was gonna, oh, I didn't remember that that's what you were, okay. Karen Main, who is the second vice president of the affiliate, and myself. If you don't know who I am, you're in the wrong room. Just kidding. I'm so new. And so actually our moderator for this particular panel is going to be our national representative, Pam Allen, who has generously volunteered to do so. So we have 4 chairs across the front of the area so that Pam can use the lectern behind it to do the questions. That way we can share this microphone. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I turned it off.
No, you're good. Okay, so thank you so much. I know we're all really looking forward to this panel and I appreciate all of the participants. I know that these conversations are personal and you're showing your vulnerability, and I really appreciate your willingness to be on this panel. I know how helpful it will be to all who hear. So could each of you just give a quick introduction? I know many of us in the room know each other, but there are some people who are here for the first time. Maybe briefly share something about that's maybe someone doesn't know about you. I know Jane gave an introduction, but something else that you'd like to share about yourselves.
Can you hear me? I'll keep my, okay, I'll keep my mask on if you can hear me. I'm Karen Main. I live in Frankfort now. I was born in Eastern Kentucky. And I learned that I was blind when I was probably 3.5 or 4. And I could see, you know, fairly well enough to run and play like everybody else. But I was up in our road, as we called it, and we were playing. And my sister said, "Oh, there's a squirrel on Ollie's barn," which was my aunt's house. And I said, "You can see Ollie's barn?" And she said, "You can't?" And I said, "No, how can you see her barn from here?" And my brother comes over and grabs her and says, "Helen, stop, don't." And right then is when I knew that I had a different, you know, I was different from her. And it was odd and scary. And I was also born with cataracts, just that's probably most everybody knows that. But and at the moment I'm president of the Frankfurt chapter here in Kentucky. So that's a little bit about me.
Hi, my name is Angela Henderson. I have been legally blind since birth, so I have retinopathy prematurity. But up until 2 years ago, well, almost 3, when I was pregnant with my son, I had a decent amount of central acuity. So I never had depth perception or peripheral vision. I had a very limited field of vision. But while pregnant with my son, my retinas detached and everything changed overnight. I was a special education teacher, teaching students with moderate to severe intellectual disabilities. And all of a sudden, I needed to find a new career path. And that was a very, very hard pill to swallow. So now I am in the UK master's program for teaching students who are blind and visually impaired. So I still get to be a teacher, and I still get to work with a very diverse population of students, but I also get to bring in my personal world of blindness. So yeah. And my little one's running around here somewhere. I'm sure you all have heard him laughing this morning. Here you go, Lonnie.
Thank you. My name's Lonnie Swafford. I've also have ROP. So I've had significant vision. Then I had some surgery in 2014. I lost quite a bit. So a lot of adjusting there. Have 2 little ones, Emma and Noah, who are most of the time the joy of my life. And the other 90% of the time will. So, and Ashley is with me. And so I love being a part of NFB. I think it's really helped shape me into the person that I am today.
All right. I am Jane Seif. I think I don't remember not knowing I was blind. However, what I do remember is that my parents basically were like, yeah, you're blind and we don't care. Go out there and run around with everybody else. So I will say that for me, I think the experience of being a blind child was exceptional because they didn't care that I was blind. They put me out there anyways. I have microphthalmia and colobomas. So honestly, most people have never seen them together where they didn't belong to a syndrome. And so lots of eye doctors will go, ooh, can my friend come look? So that's always fun. But I was always the kid in the crowd who was like, yeah, my vision's always been the same. It's always been the same. What about 2019? I got myself in a lift and I go to the eye doctor, thought I had an eye infection. And he's like, no, I think your eye is dying. Well, this particular eye didn't really see that much anyways. It was like, you know, colors and light and shadows and things like that. I couldn't read out of it or anything. But I'm in the lift on the way home going, why did I go by myself? I'm in this lift going, I don't know. Because he was talking, you know, eye removal and all these scary, scary things you didn't want to hear. So that being said, I did eventually have my eye removed several months later and I have a prosthetic. And because I couldn't like read out of that eye or anything, I don't think that I realized how much difference it would make. Let me tell you that it does. Sit in a restaurant now and I'm always like, if I sit on that side and the server comes up next to me, I have no idea they're there and they're standing there like waiting to take my order. So I think it's made me realize, you know, things in a very, very different way than I previously had. And I didn't realize it until the end of the pandemic. And in the past year, a lot of you who know me personally have heard me talk about it, that my remaining eye has a very large cataract. It always has. They've always told me, you know, yeah, it's big. We're just going to leave it. The last several years, people have started saying, well, I think we should remove it. Lonnie Swafford and I have known each other since we were children. And after they told him that and he lost his vision, I kept saying, no, 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 no. But now I have reached a point where things are significantly different. And I don't think I realized it. I think when I realized that was Phil and I went on a trip very recently and he would go, it's over there by the green bench. And I'm like, don't see that. So that was a little bit, and he was like, I really just don't even know how to describe things to you anymore because I'm going by what you could see 2 years ago, and that isn't what you can see now. So.
Okay, great. Thank you. So let me just, I want to, along those lines, and let's start with Lonnie, and then each of you can have a chance to answer this question. And Jane mentioned in the introduction of the panel that it is difficult, especially when you're in an organization in a position of leadership where people come to you to ask questions about blindness and how to handle blindness. And then your vision changes and you're, processing that in your own way. What was challenging? How did that make you feel when you were experiencing changes in your vision with or without warning, and maybe facing some fears that you didn't even realize that you had? And some of you have already given great examples about specific things, but how did you handle that? And what is particularly unique in your situation? What kinds of feelings did you feel? Did you feel pressure or in the position that you held, or how did you process that for yourself? So Bonnie, let's start with you.
Thank you, Pam. So I was kind of like Jane. I was just going through the normal process of living, and I started to notice things were getting a little bit more difficult for me to see, especially at night. So I went to my checkup, and they said, well, I think you have a cataract and we should probably go ahead and remove it. And this was in 2014. And so the expectation was, okay, well, I've known people that's had that done, and they just kind of have a couple days and they're good to go. So we had it removed, and noticed my vision immediately changed, and went back to the doctor, and they said, well, we're going to put in a secondary lens because we had to take your natural lens off and put in a second one. So we're going to, and that should help. That'll fix it right up. So they did. And so that was about a month later, and I'm thinking, okay, well, we'll get that done and I should be good to go. And so then after that, it didn't help. And so I was very frustrated. I remember it was around Father's Day when I just had a moment. We were all out celebrating, and I was very upset, and I had to take a step back and be thankful for what I did have. And at that time, when this happened, I was trying to work at a new company that I had just started with a couple of months before that, and that wasn't going well accommodation wise. So I had that, and then I also had my family dynamic of my mom, who just couldn't accept it, and I think she had more and still has more difficulty accepting it than I do, wanting to sue doctors and just the whole other gambit of that. So the real challenges for me came a little later in the fall when my contract was ending with the company, and I was trying to find a new job, and I was starting to notice I could no longer read large print. I could no longer use Zoom text on the computer. I could no longer read any of the handwriting that I had written. I mean, it was a lot of things all at once. And so I just got a new job in November, and had no idea as to how that was going to work out. And so I was dealing with, okay, I've lost all of this vision. I've got family on one side saying a whole bunch of things. I've got a new employer. I'm trying to explain what I need, and we're not sure how that's going to go. So it was a very challenging time, and I was able to overcome it with a lot of support from Ashley and from my friends and some family. And it helped me to, going back, with NFB, I was working with them in 2005 with another scenario with an employer. And so I was able to draw on those experiences and use that to advocate for myself and educate the new employer as to this is what I need and this is how we need to make it happen. But I still experience issues with it sometimes. There's things that'll come up. Oh, I used to be able to see that. Now I can't see that. So it's been challenging, but I'm grateful to move forward with the support of NFB and from the people in my life.
This is Angela. So everything happened for me all at once. I had Toby in January of 2020. I had my second retina surgery 2 weeks after he was born. The pandemic hit. I was laid off from my job, supposedly due to the pandemic, but in reality, due to my vision loss. And so I was not only adapting to basically having no usable vision, but I was adapting to new motherhood, which any moms out there know that that's in itself a whole thing. So, I can remember being on the phone with Laura and just having a moment, just freaking out, like how I was going to do this. And, I've been blessed to be a part of the Federation since I was 10. Like I've been around, most of you all since I was 10, and some of y'all since I was younger than that. And you all have all been role models to me and, provided me with that experience that I needed to know that I could do it. But Laura kind of snapped me out of my, the state I was in at that moment, because, I was very down on myself and just, I didn't know how I was going to be able to raise Toby and to just do my job and to do everything I needed. And she's like, Angela, this can be done. Like, you've seen it done before. You have friends who do this every day, like basically snap out of it. And I needed that. Like, she said it a little harsher than that, to be honest, but it was what I needed in that moment. And very appreciative for that. I mean, I'm not going to say it's been easy. Like, there's still some things I struggle with. But I mean, like Lonnie said, I went from being able to read large print with a magnifier and handwriting and, write and do things like that to not being able to overnight. And, I've always struggled with tactile perception. So Braille is not my strong suit. So that's a whole struggle in itself. So, there are still some things, but my Federation family has helped me a lot. Because I mean, I've called many of y'all. Like, I've called Jane asking questions. Like, I've called Lauren, Todd. I've called Kathy. I've called Ashley. And like, I've called a bunch of y'all. Karen, like, I could name a list. Like, but I mean, that's part of being in the Federation, is supporting one another. And, I think your question was, Pam, was being a leader in the Federation, was it not? And as leaders, like, we support others, but also we support one another. And I think that's the great part of the Federation is, we always say Federation family, and we really mean it. Like, this really is a big family. We really are here for one another in every sense of that. So I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Here you go, Karen.
Hi, this is Karen. I've been born, I was born blind, and I always kind of figured that someday I might be totally blind, but that was always someday. And so I always would say, someday I'm going to learn this and that. And I was lucky. I already knew Braille. I could dial a phone without, looking at it. And I'm like, I can handle it. It's not going to be that hard. I was wrong. I'm not totally blind, but my vision is, really pretty much useless. So I try not to use it, because I've heard that if you do try and you actually can, then you might try again later and then you can't. And so, as I said, it's pretty useless. And it started in 2003. I had a cornea perforation. I had some kind of hemorrhage and all that fun mess. And then I had another transplant in 2005, and it lasted about 1.5 years. And then glaucoma came along and said, you can't see anymore. So, and it was so frustrating. It was a whole lot more frustrating than I ever thought it would be. But I don't have any trouble cooking or anything like that. A little harder than I thought it would be, but I was able to adapt. It's the travel part that I hate. Because I never had to use a cane. I could see well enough not to, fall off a step or run into folks. And I always said, I'm going to go to the Louisiana Center and learn how to travel. But anyway, some of my challenges now are my grandsons. I always fear that my daughter-in-law's family will say, what if they get hurt at her house, or what, things like that. I'm sure everybody has that fear sometimes. But as for being a leader, I always say I can do whatever I'm told. I've never felt leader-like, but I'm trying really hard to run our chapter, and I love my Federation family. I don't know that I would have been able to feel the way I do about how bad my vision is now if it wasn't for you all. So I guess that's pretty much all I have to say.
So I guess it was a year and a half ago. I'm not exactly sure when. I realized that I couldn't read most of the print anymore. And a lot of you know that I used to have reading glasses with like a big giant magnifier, and handy dandy little things they were. And so I was like, I'm gonna go get a low vision eval, because Riley and Taryn both do wear glasses for corrective purposes. And I was like, I'm gonna get some new reading glasses, because I think these ones must just be too scratched up. That's how come they don't work. So I'm sitting there and the lady says, there's nothing we can do for you. The cataract has changed the curvature of your lens to such a degree that if you hold things close enough for you to see them, they're too blurry for you to see them. So unless you could see from far away, like people holding their newspaper out, like way out, not going to happen. I can't. So I remember riding home in the car, and I remember, I think I texted Ashley and Mary and Stephanie, and I was like, I recognize that as a blind leader, not being able to read print doesn't make me, less capable. It just means that I'm going to do it a different way. And I do know Braille. I'm not great, but I do know it. But I never said anything like on Facebook or publicly or anything like that, because it's very hard to say, I believe blind people can do everything, but I'm very frustrated that I now can't do this. And I think that it's important to know that's just natural. It doesn't mean I think, I mean, like I'm perfectly fine. It's a year and a half later, I still can't read it, but you're still going to have a moment. You're still a person, Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, no, I think I appreciate all of your comments. I think it is really important. I think sometimes the most pressure that we put is on ourselves. And so just all those real life examples about how we're people, we're human, we have feelings, we have fears, we as leaders, and whether we have a specific title or just as members, we feel like we are, ambassadors. So we want always to be presenting our best. And sometimes when we're struggling inside, we wonder if people can see those struggles. And sometimes we think we're the only one having those struggles. But as we hear from our panelists who are sharing, and I'm sure many people who are listening can relate to the examples that you're giving, that we have those questions ourselves. And that's part of the process of growing and acknowledging. So several of you in different ways have referenced family, friends, and the impact they had on your own attitudes about blindness. And also in this question, specifically asking, as your vision is changing, the reactions that those close in your lives had, maybe situations where you noticed negative reactions. You've all referenced how members of your Federation family and your own family encouraged you at times, but how did you handle situations where maybe someone around you in your circle was treating you differently, not in a positive way, as maybe they recognize the changes that were taking place, and how did you handle that? So let's see, Angela, can we start with you?
So for me, like most of my family have known, my whole life that I've been legally blind, but I think they've had difficulties since it has gotten worse. And even like even my best friends, because I moved away and taught in a different city for 6 years, and I recently moved back to my hometown. Well, one of my best friends from childhood approached me and my son the other day and had no idea that I could not see her. And like she reached down to pick up my son. So we were at a gas station and she reached down to pick up my son, and all I knew was some stranger was trying to pick up my child. So I went into complete fight mode and was about ready to beat up who I thought was a stranger over my child. And it turned out to be one of my best friends. And she was like, oh my gosh, I knew you couldn't see and I knew your vision got worse, but I had no idea. And I think she was kind of appalled because she just didn't realize. And I'm not sure if she didn't realize just because she was just so used to me, or if she was just like, honestly didn't pay attention, which I guess I'm glad for. But at the same time, I'm like, hey now, like, don't grab my kid. But I mean, that's just kind of a funnier story. But I think the hardest part for me was the reaction of my former employers before switching jobs, switching to TBI, because I completely had to switch my area of expertise within education because of losing my vision and because of the reactions of my administration and things of that nature. And that was a hard pill to swallow. And honestly, like looking back on it now, I know I could have fought that. And I probably could have won that battle, but at the same time, I'm not sure I would have wanted to continue to work in an environment that would have been that toxic, because that would not have been a good environment if they still viewed me as incapable of teaching those children. So I think I know that has been the hardest situation. Who would you like to go next, Pam?
How about Lon?
Okay.
So I kind of talked about a little bit earlier, some of the differences with family, but I haven't had a lot of negative reactions, I would say, in regard to the vision loss. What I've experienced is the lack of, I guess, understanding or acceptance of the loss of the vision from family. For the most part, my friends have been great. I've not really had any issues there, but I think, as an example, I've told certain family members over and over again, I can no longer see pictures. And so, don't send me pictures because I'm not going to look at them. And then maybe an hour later, that same person will send me 18 pictures in Facebook Messenger. And I'm like, all right, so you still don't get it after repetitive, I guess, conversations with me. I don't know if you're just not accepting it or you're not paying attention to it. But I think that's the biggest challenge is other people coming to terms with it more so than negative reactions, because I've always had vision issues around all of my family and friends. It's just not to that degree. So, and I think part of the where a lot of them are, located throughout the state, and I don't see a lot of them. They've not had a lot of exposure. Some of them have, but it's just trying to communicate effectively and get them to understand that my life has changed and this is how I used to do things, and this is how I have to change that, whether it's work or watching Noah and Emma, or taking them out, doing things with them. So just really making sure that everybody understands that.
Thank you. How about Jane next?
I'm glad you mentioned that about pictures. For me, that has, okay, so I can still see them to an extent. However, I need a little commentary, so I at least have a starting point. And my lovely family, they're sitting back there, they know who they are, perpetually sends group texts with pictures with no explanation. I remember the night before we left for convention, I was like, Phil, what is that a picture of? He's like, oh, that's the Halloween decoration that was making the noise. I found it. Okay. No idea what this picture was. I was like, I need some kind of a reference point. And in particular, like my parents, my sister, my brother, they all have like a group text and they'll send pictures. And I'm like, give the blind girl something to start with. Like I might be able to see it, but I need, this is a flower. This is a child. And I can go, oh, okay, yeah, I can be, yep, okay. I'm there with you. This isn't family, but so I have a teaching assistant right now, and she actually was my teaching assistant right after I had my eye surgery. So a couple of years ago, we haven't worked together in a couple of years. And when I last worked with her, I could see who the children were a little bit better than I can now. And the struggle that I'm having, and I think this is kind of a defining thing for all of us up here, is in expressing to people what it is you need them to do so that you can still do the things that you want to do. And like, so for example, she'll go, well, she has that. I'm like, just use the kid's name. Just, Anna has a banana, go get it from her. Like say a child's name, because I don't know who she or he is. Or she'll go, they're over there. Well, I never liked that particularly, but I like it even less now. And I or can you go check? So I'm very good at my job. I still feel completely comfortable doing it. But when I go check on all the kids, I kind of like make a circuit of the room. Well, for somebody to say, can you go do this with this child that I have no idea where they are, because right now I'm with these kids, and just, realizing what directions do I need to give you, so you give me the information I need so that I can do the job I am perfectly capable of doing with the correct information, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
I can relate to the picture thing as well. I've hardly ever been able to see pictures. Well, I could tell whether they were people or animals, but I couldn't tell what animals or people. And they still will send a picture and not bother to tell me what it's of. But that's neither here nor there. I think my family is hugely close. We're really weird in that sense, I think, because I hear things that go on in other folks' families, and it's just foreign to me. But they've always been there for me. I'm the baby of the family, so they, have always been there and all. And a lot of times, especially during the pandemic, we didn't get to see each other, and I've lost a significant amount of vision in the last couple of years or so. And so when they would see me, sometimes I'd be in my own home, so they really couldn't tell how bad it actually had gotten until I'd go to one of their homes and they'd leave something out in the hall and I'd fall over it, or I'd plow into one of their walls or something. And I'd say, when did you move the wall? But anyway, so, but my biggest one I'm going to say is my neighbor. I love her to pieces, but she just is, I can't leave her home without her coming out the door to make sure I make it, maybe 10 yards to my house. I don't know. And one day she parked in the driveway and was getting out of her van. And I said, why are you getting out? She said, I'm going to walk you to the door. I said, I'm at my house. I think I can make it up my own sidewalk and get to the door. So I think that's my biggest problem. I love her to death. She's a wonderful neighbor, but so.
Okay, now, and I thank you. Those are all, I really appreciate that. Again, I think it's so helpful to hear those direct examples, because I think we can probably all name a person in our lives or a similar experience to that. You mentioned a couple that Jane, you talked about specifically asking people, or being direct in what you need or don't need sometimes. Stuff like also it was referenced earlier, using a cane, maybe something that you're doing now that you weren't doing before. As your vision has changed, I know implementing new alternative techniques. What has been something, a technique or a strategy that you've implemented that you found most helpful to allow you to do your job or just to live your life? It could be your personal life or your professional life, something that you found really useful, or even that maybe you're still working on that is helpful to you, that you've incorporated. So Karen, can you think of, do you want to start that one?
I don't really know. I think I have actually gotten a lot better with my cane. I feel less lost, I guess. Like I said earlier, most everything else, Braille, I did a whole lot of stuff by touch already. Some of my cooking I did, with a little bit of vision, if, depending on what it was, like frying pork chops, for example, I could tell whether or not they were brown or, and of course now I can't, but I have figured out now that you can use a fork and tell when they're done. That took a while. But I think my cane has become more of a part of me than I ever thought that it would. Like now it's like I kind of compare it to people in their car, for example. I feel like it's my transportation. It's my friend. It's if I don't have it, I won't, well, of course I do it home or in my son's house or whatever, but I don't go anywhere without it. I won't walk down my sidewalk without it because it's a stupid sidewalk. That's neither here nor there. I think it's my cane that I have. I've really grown to really like my cane a lot.
Thanks. Jane, you want to go next?
I think the thing is that in the reality of this continuum, I am still in the part where I am trying to transition to doing things differently. Lonnie Swafford will tell you that I am frequently, how do I make voiceover do that? Because I have no idea. But the reality is here, this is where I am right now. The reality is that people will send me texts and I will answer them. And they will say, what are you answering? And I'm like, well, didn't you ask me? They're like, no, please turn your voiceover on, because I'm still a turn on, turn off girl. Lonnie really definitely has a good story about that. But so I think for me, I'm still kind of in that transitioning period where I'm still trying to do things and not realizing that what I'm doing is not working. A little bit of avoidance on my part, just because I get so frustrated trying to figure out how to do it. So I am working on the voiceover piece. For me, a lot of it is technology. So I have figured out how to take all of my notes, my anecdotal notes in school using the Apple Watch. There is an app you can get for it called Notes, and I can actually dictate into it. And learning how to, leave the voiceover on these products and not just get really mad when it doesn't do what I want it to do. Definitely, I have JAWS on my computer at work. I used to just bring my laptop with JAWS on it, and I didn't always have it on the desktop. And this year was just like, no, it's got to be there. If it annoys the rest of my teammates in my class, I don't care. Whatever. You can I showed them all how to turn it off so they can. But like I've always had everything Braille labeled and things like that. But I will say that I have as anybody does, you know, had a tendency to glance at the print when I could see it, and, the glancing isn't really helpful anymore. So I guess I'm in transition on that one, Pam. Working on it.
I love that. I appreciate your honesty, and I think that's true of most people, of most of us. It is a transition process. So that's great examples. Let's see, Angela, how about you?
So definitely my cane. I can agree with Karen on that one. And I think that's been a big eye opener to my family and friends, especially since moving back to my hometown. Because I used to always have my cane with me, but I was notorious for carrying it in my purse and saying, I'll use it when I need it. But yet I would always still fall over things because it was never in my hand. But yeah. Yes, the Lincoln Memorial definitely rings a bell. Thank you, Jane. For those of you that don't know, I almost fell off of it in high school. But now my cane has become a part of my body. It is always in my hands. And when I don't have it, I'm freaking out. And as a result, I have become a much better traveler. I know I'm a much better traveler now, and I feel much more confident in my traveling abilities. I use screen readers now pretty much consistently. VoiceOver on my phone, JAWS on my computer, and VBA. I kind of go back and forth with them. The thing I struggle with though is Braille. As I said before, I have had tactile perception issues since I was little. Laura can attest to that as my TBI. And it's something that I'm struggling with now. And it's not that I don't know the code and don't know it in my brain, but getting it from my brain to my fingertips doesn't always work. And as someone who's blind and needs that as their reading medium, and as an educator, it is very frustrating for me. And, those of you that were on the meeting when we were sharing our funny trees, I shared that, that is mine. It is my big struggle. It is the thing that I wish I knew how to overcome. But it is the thing I work on daily, just trying to improve my Braille and improve that tactile perception. But I honestly don't know how to fix it. So
Sounds like you're doing exactly what you need to.
well, thank you for that. I appreciate that.
So I have a very specific scenario with this one that's happened. It was almost, maybe it was a year ago, or a little over a year ago. Ashley was preparing dinner one day, and she said, I've had these things in the oven for like an hour and they're still not done. So when we checked, the oven had died. And so and some of you may know where we're going with this, and Jane does. So we had talked about new appliances previously. Well, we need to get some new ones. These are, would come with the house, and they're starting to. Yeah, so they were starting to die. So once the oven died, that kind of made up our mind. So I started looking, and I'm like, okay, well, we'll find something. And I knew GE had developed some partnerships with KSB, and they had done some things, and I was trying to find some appliances. And we searched several hardware stores, Bonnie Castle and Lowe's and Home Depot, and several of them. And I said, I just want a stove and a fridge and a dishwasher with buttons and knobs and switches and a microwave that I can use. Do you have that? Well, no, they don't. And, since my vision loss, everything is now touchscreen. And not only that, I wanted a stove with the traditional burners with the coils. No, sorry, none of that anymore. So I'm freaking out. I'm like, well, how am I going to make this work? I've never used a flat top, and what do I need to do? And I was calling Jane and how do you do this? And what do you do? And looking at AFB's websites. And I was almost in tears at one point because even after we picked the appliances, getting them brailled or labeled was a significant undertaking. So after an exhaustive search, I kind of went towards smart devices because of Alexa and different things. And I'm like, well, maybe I can kind of supplement a little bit. So we got them, and we got them labeled after a friend of ours came over and spent like 2 hours labeling every single button and thing. But the biggest challenge for me was just, I guess, learning that things do change, whether you want them to or not. And you have to change with them. And that I hate change. If something works for me, just leave it alone, And so it's been very difficult for me to overcome the touchscreen era of appliances in the kitchen. And I'm thinking, well, I hope our washer and dryer lasts another 20, 30 years. But so I would have to say that's been, and then of course, cooking on the flat top, I just learn, turn the heat on just a little bit, feel where it's coming out, and then go with it. So it's actually not as bad as I thought. So that's my scenario for that one.
I can relate to that. Yes, definitely. Thank you all. Those were really powerful examples. I want each of you to think about, because I'm sure we have a lot of people who are listening on Zoom and also in the room here who are relating to the examples that you've given. And some people, I think no one has it all together. We can think of people in our lives and we look at, we think, wow, they just have it. They know what to do and they know how to handle things. And when you really sit down and talk to them, you realize that person has struggles. And I think sometimes as leaders, as members, as blind people, where we're always wanting to make sure that we, educate others about blindness, it's sometimes hard to be open and to express those things. But what I think our panelists have shown us so eloquently today is it's in expressing those things and talking about them and sharing them. And I love how all of you gave examples of how each other and others in here in our Federation family and your families hold you accountable. You might say, are you working on your braille? Or have you tried this? Or make sure you're using voiceover or whatever. That we, with love, we hold each other accountable. And it's in expressing our worries and our fears that we really can face them. Otherwise, they just stay inside and they get bigger and bigger and they get larger and harder to face. So maybe somebody that's listening today is in the beginning of this. They're really, relating to your stories and wondering, but they're kind of stuck, in the fear. And all four of you have shown how you're working through this process. What advice do you have for others and who are working on this? Because in truth, we're all working on this. So let's see. Angela, let's start with you.
My first piece of advice would be, don't give up. Don't give in to those fears, because they're just that, they are fears. You can do it. You can overcome this. You just have to work hard and believe in yourself. And we are here to support you. We are here to help you. And we are here to walk beside you.
Karen.
I don't think I can expand on that much except to say it gets better. You'll have a day when you feel like strangling the whole world because sometimes people are just dumb. You go, to vote, for example, and they'll ask you a stupid question such as, do you know your address? You will have those days and you'll have, more of them than you'd like. You'll wake up some morning and you'll think, how am I going to make it through today? What do I need to do? But I promise you, it does get better. I know you might think, well, that's easy for you to say. You were born with a vision issue. You grew up that way, blah, blah, blah. And if you're struggling through it and you never had the problem, that I cannot relate to, but I can imagine it. And I can only say it gets better. And as Angela said, you can do whatever you want. You just need support from your family and friends. And if you stick with our federation, we will help you in every way possible.
Lonnie?
So one specific fear that I think I've seen and I've had myself is the fear to come to terms with what's going on and reach out for help. Oftentimes I've myself have tried to I wouldn't say ignore the problem or downplay it, but I think part of the process is recognizing that it's there and not being afraid to reach out and say, hey, I need help. I'm struggling on the job, or I'm struggling at home, and where do I go? How do I improve my life? And what is it that I need to make that happen? So I would just say, don't be afraid to reach out, and let someone know that you need that help to do the things you want to do.
A lot of us who grew up here in a significantly large blind community have heard a lot of people say, well, I'm blind, but I'm not affiliated to any group. This is what I will say to that the number one piece of advice that I have is you need a community. When people call me, that is the first thing I tell them. I'm like, you have to have people. You have to have someone that you can go, hey, how do I do this? Or, hey, I'm just having a bad day and I need to talk about it. Or, and I will tell you that even among the leaders of this affiliate, we have a community. We definitely text each other very regularly, whether we have figured out that something has been made accessible that we didn't know about, or whether we are trying to figure out how to make something accessible. There's a lot of connection, and I don't think that anything is going to be more valuable than that person-to-person connection in your blind community.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I have this quote that I want to read, and I want to thank all four of you. Let's have a round of applause for our panelists. They had no idea what they were going to be asked. So that takes a lot of courage and facing of fears to get up and kind of bare your soul in front of everybody to share, and also to help by sharing your stories. You're helping all of us face our fears. So this quote is from Brené Brown, and it says, vulnerability sounds like truth and feels like courage. Truth and courage are not always comfortable, but they are never weakness. Vulnerability is the birthplace of love, belonging, joy, empathy, and creativity. It is the source of hope, accountability, and authenticity. If we want greater clarity in our purpose or deeper and more meaningful lives, vulnerability is the path. And all of you have been extremely vulnerable with us, have shared the journey that you are on, because it is always, and change is inevitable, even though we all struggle with it, as Lonnie said. But because we have each other, we have the community of the National Federation of the Blind, we know we are not walking this path alone. So thank you so much again, and for sharing your powerful experiences and your stories, and helping all of us to grow stronger by facing our fears. And thank you for your work and your contributions in our Federation family. And let's have another round of applause for our panelists. And I will turn it back over to Madam President.
You can just leave them. We can move them later if you want. We have 8 minutes left, so now we will sit in silence and stare at each other. No, just kidding. We're not really going to do that. Okay, we can have a door prize. But what I was going to say is that I think that everybody can agree that a little extra time to get some lunch wouldn't be a problem. So after we do this door prize, we will adjourn until 2 p.m. In which case you need. Oh, Angela Henderson, she's here. We know that. So we will following Angela's receipt of the door prize, we will adjourn and we will come back together at 2 p.m. Thank you all.